Hey everybody, welcome to the Survival Show podcast with me, David, and we've got some special guests along where it's going to be our job to take you step by step through the mindset, skills, tactics, and gear you need to survive almost any crisis, emergency, or disaster. It's our goal that when we all leave out of here today, that we're better prepared at the end of the show than we are right now. So we've got so much to cover today, and no Craig today. It's me, and I'll introduce my special guests here in a little bit, but here's what we're going to talk about. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, and maybe before we get into all this, I want to welcome our audio podcast listeners, and I want to welcome again our YouTube watchers and listeners and our Facebook watchers. Thank you guys for joining us today. You guys seem to be enjoying this format, so we're going to keep it going. Today we're going to kind of break things down into some different segments. But our main topic is very important, and you're going to find out why with our special guests here in a few minutes. But are there some key indicators going on in our world right now that may be pointing to a global food shortage in the near future? That's going to be a question that we're going to dig into. And so I'm going to bring in my good friend, Bob Gaskin of MRE Nation and Minotaur Trading Company. He is a long-term storage food expert, a survival expert, a business super entrepreneur, a great guy, and he's just very knowledgeable about many things. And I just want to, he's our food expert for sure. And then I'm going to introduce our newest addition to the team here at Ultimate Survival Tips and the Survival Show podcast, Gabe Petrovsky. I may refer to him as the professor, and you'll find out why in a few minutes. He's actually sitting across the table from me right now in the studio, and we'll get into that. But he's going to bring us some geopolitical news, some stuff that has to do with China also, and bring that into the equation because there's been so much going on in the U.S. We may have taken our sight off of some geopolitical things that are going on that may be affecting us and may affect us in the near future. Then we are going to share with you the 7 tiers of building your survival food cache. You need to pay attention to this. Start with the easiest tiers first, and we'll go from there. And some of you guys don't know what an MRE is. We're going to go back to the basics a little bit, have Bob talk to us about what an MRE is and what it isn't. And probably a lot more. We got a full show ahead, but before we get into all this, I want to thank our sponsors. Yes, Tiny Survival Guide. We're going to be working a little bit out of section 2, and this Tiny Survival Guide also has, I think it's 24 lists. So a lot of the lists we're going to talk about today are actually in the Tiny Survival Guide. You can get these at tinysurvival.com, ultimatesurvivaltips.com, and we are an Amazon pick for the keywords survival guide. So pretty cool over there. So pick you up some Tiny Survival Guides and MSK1 knife for 2020. We've got the MSK1 primitive, half the price of the original MSK1. You can see it right there. Pretty nice deal. We've got the new MSK1 Elite made out of 154 cm stainless steel and a proprietary blend of Cerakote. And I mean, in times like these, everybody needs an MSK1 Elite Warrior knife. It's a triple bladed monster. We have our full fine edge here. We've got a top edge and we've got a serrated edge there. Check those out at msk1knife.com or Ultimate Survival Tips. So let me bring Gabe in here. Hey, Gabe.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, first time on the podcast. Gabe recently joined our staff here. Gabe is also my son-in-law. It's probably going to be awkward for him. He usually calls me Dad. He's going to call me Dave or David here, right?
I think that's the way it's going to work.
And Gabe is a real history buff. I joke around with him, but I say that he's got almost a photographic memory, which he would dispute with me, but I've had conversations with him, and he can go the whole way back to the beginning of recorded history and tell us all about why things are the way they are. and how they got that way. And he is also serving here as our head of product development or product manufacturing and production, which means what, Gabe?
That means lots of packaging.
He packs all of our tiny survival guides and our survival kits and all of that. Gabe, so I don't know. I feel like I'm ready to bring Bob in here, and we got to get into this content. What do you think?
Sounds great.
All right, let's bring Bob in. Bob, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
Good. Hey, Bob's been on the podcast, I think, at least 2 times before. And Bob, you wanna just get our people up to speed? I don't know. I don't think you've been on with our YouTube folks and our Facebook video folks. So can you go ahead and just give us a little, maybe a 3-minute elevator pitch, and tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you have gotten, maybe a little connection with Ultimate Survival Tips and me, and then we're going to get into this great content.
Sure. So let's see, 89 to 95, United States Marine Corps Infantry. Summer of 92, I was supposed to be in the jungles of Panama for about 15 days, ended up being out there 27. They gave us, for a 6-man team, they gave us 2 cases of MREs. It's about 4 MREs apiece and a 5-gallon jug of water to split between the 6 of us. And we were out there for almost a month, right? So when I came home, obviously I became a prepper. I was never going to be hungry again. The things we ate in the jungle were very unspeakable, right? So in the late 90s, I got into teaching survival training. Now I teach everything as far as survival: urban, wilderness, cold weather, jungle, desert, mountain, wilderness, mountain. Cold weather wilderness mountain's my favorite one to teach. I love cold weather survival and cold weather camping. Back in 2016, I was, of course, 2011 through 2019, I did just a ton of prepper shows and was typically keynote speaker at most of these prepper shows. In 2016, I was getting ready for a prepper show and had just finished up one and was getting ready for another one here in about 3 weeks. And I was looking around at everything that people have been selling, all these prepper shows, and I realized that 95% of the stuff that people buy at prepper shows are things that are not going to be the type of items they need when the Schumer hits the fan, right? So I began with Rations and evolved from there into fire starter kits, personal survival kits, but putting together, quality products, things that people really need. And the Rations took off. I'm now one of the leading cutting edge companies in the MRE and industry. We're always coming out with something new, latest, greatest, changing the industry, right? So the focus of my life for the past 25, 30 years now has been not just honing my skills to be better equipped when the Schumer hits the fan, to protect myself, my family, my loved ones, my friends, my neighbors, but also to get as many people as I know as I can ready for that day when, either major disaster hits and they go a few weeks without electricity and food restocking, or things like a global pandemic, or just complete and total breakdown of society. The more people we can get being prepared for that and being trained for that, the better off we as a people will be when we do see the end of our society. So that's the high altitude version, brother.
Yeah, we met a couple of years ago. Hit it off.
Hit it Blade Show, wasn't it? 2013, 2014 at the Blade Show?
Back in the day, man.
Yeah. And then I was doing a couple things, 2018, 2019, and we tried bringing everything together, and since then just sparked into a friendship, and digging it.
Yeah, that was back in the day when we were, thank you, you are too. Consider you a brother. We met back in the day when everything was survival theory. Remember that? When survival was a hobby word. But no more. There's just way too many things going on. We'll get into that. But one interesting fact I want to mention about you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but For all of you guys that love the concept of bugging out, I just want to tell you that Bob has no home. He lives in a perpetual bug out situation. He lives lean and mean. Is that right, Bob?
Well, that's correct, but not completely correct. I do have a home. I just haven't been there in 5 years. So yeah, my wife and I are full-time RVers. We travel the country. We go where we want to go and do what we want to do, and yeah, just try to spread the word, spread the love, and relax. I tell people all the time, I vacation 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and I work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. So, but yeah, we travel all over the country, man. You never know where we're going to pop up next.
All right, so for you guys that are following along in the Tiny Survival Guide, you can go ahead and get your guides out because we are dipping into this thing again, and we will continue to do so because about almost everything we talk about in every podcast is covered in here in one way or another. But if you're in your Tiny Survival Guide, go to section B. There's an expert tip in the bottom right-hand corner of that section, and it's called the critical rules of threes. And here's the critical rules of threes, and there's a reason I'm mentioning this. When three strange things get your attention or go wrong, stop what you're doing, regroup, and consider a new plan. Don't ignore three anomalies. If you pay attention to those three anomalies and make a new plan, that'll probably serve you really good. Now, we're just talking about three anomalies here in the critical rule of threes. And I have at least 9 anomalies that we're facing right now in just the United States that I want to encourage you guys, do not ignore these anomalies. We can't normalize what's going on right now because if we do, we're going to be caught off guard. I totally understand this idea, Bob and Gabe, that people want things to be back to normal. We all want that, right? But if we think that we've got this pandemic nailed, and that's the only thing our focus is on right now, or even the pandemic, let me just name off some of these, and you guys can throw in anything else that you see. But we've got this pandemic. It's crazy, and it doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon. We've got so much division in our country. We've got riots that have protests that have been hijacked into full-scale riots. The whole Black Lives Matters things. I think I've got more than 10. The Marxist tear-it-all-down mentality that's rising in our country and we're allowing it to fester in many ways. Defund police. What?
Seriously, I can't get over it. Whenever I think of it, it's like, that's crazy. Like, what do you do? Who do you call when you have a disaster if you defund the police? You're going to call somebody, and if the government starts setting up, or if not the government, even local officials start setting up their own private security, now that private security isn't even responsible to the people. Our current police system is at least responsible to the people, but you get private security in there that could potentially be uncontrollable by anybody but their beloved leader, the governor of, say, New York, maybe. And
I'll let you, Bob, I know you're always itching to jump in, but I'll let you guys jump in here in a second. We're in an election year. We've got this whole controversy of mail-in ballots. We've got so many factors just with the elections that potentially it seems like it's being set up that some may say that regardless of what the results are, it could be invalid. And then we've got one candidate who's really not even there. Sorry. He's just not. Are you laughing, Bob?
I am.
That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to leave you space on there. We've got the new lockdown, right? No school in the fall. So we had a friend was over taking some of our chickens to his home so they'll live out their happy little lives at his place, at his farm, forever and ever. Because he's smart and he wants the chicken manure, and we're smart and we don't want to feed them anymore because they're really old, laying hens. And anyway, he works with the Pennsylvania school system, And I just asked him point blank, are we going back to school in Pennsylvania in the fall? And he said, I don't think we are.
Yeah, we're not going back to school in the fall.
Yeah. And we're not even really talking about this much, but all this crazy government spending. When are we going to go over the cliff on that? So you guys go ahead and kick in whatever you want out of this list.
Where do we begin with that? You left out the 17 countries that are dealing with locust plagues. You left out the United Nations report that that we are living in a world of biblically apocalyptic scenarios.
Well, let's keep it to the United States now, because we're going to jump into some international stuff here with a little update with Gabe.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I think you pretty much said it all then.
So I think I had 9 things listed, but there were subcategories to these. So remember this, the critical rule of threes. Remember this. There are unprecedented things going on right now. We want things to be normal. We've lived in general societal stability for many, many, many years. Things have gotten back to a sense of normal. But I'm just feeling, Bob and Gabe, that things have changed. How about you?
I feel like there's a willingness to give in to fear, a willingness to be led by fear. You know, the pandemic in, February and March, as bad as it was, I was on the road through all of February and March and got home in April. And the food shortage was largely induced by fear. It's not that there isn't new food shortages looming, and Bob will share more about that. But when the pandemic first hit, everybody went out and panic bought, and they, then suddenly when you needed to buy normal supplies, you couldn't. But if everybody had been a little bit patient, that supply chain would have been in much better shape. And I think that shows a willingness to be led by fear, to be led by the media fear mongering, and that unthinking fear without the critical questioning, why are we doing what we're doing? Why is my reaction this way? How can I be more level-headed? Seems like that willingness to be level-headed and to question the media is being left off, and people just auto-response acting out of fear and doing whatever the media says they should be doing. I think that's a big change, a big shift in the American psyche.
That's really good. Now, Bob, I'm going to bring you in here because Bob and I have been in contact about some things, and Bob mentioned, dude, we need to talk soon because there's some crazy things going on with the supply chain and long-term storage food, and so we did chat. We chatted for a short bit, and you had sent me some text on what's going on, but I have not gotten the full story, and our listeners and watchers know nothing right now. So bring us into that world and what you've seen going on as some key indicators that we really need to be paying attention about and to.
Okay, so first of all, I agree with the fact that a lot of the buying and a lot of the shortages we dealt with in the early days were from panic buying from people that are being led by fear. And normally,
panic-driven disaster, yeah.
Yeah, normally I try to tell people, if you prepare for the worst and hope for the best, then no matter what happens, you'll be okay because you'll be prepared for that, right? So there's nothing to be afraid of. Eyes open, no fear, the whole 9 yards. But let me tell you something right now. If you don't have everything that your family needs to survive on for 3 to 5 years, you do need to be afraid. Everybody in this country, everybody in the planet.
3 to 5 years?
Yes. Everybody on the planet right now, not just in our country, but everybody globally should be terrified about what's going on right now. And I'm not the type of person to spread fear. I go out there and I dispel the conspiracy theories and try to get people to follow the bouncing red ball to the end and realize, no, this is somebody's opinion. This is not fact. Blah blah blah. Don't pay attention to conspiracies. I mean, really, who cares if we actually landed on the moon or not? I got a cool Tang drink out of it, and I got this awesome pin that writes upside down underwater. I love the space program. I don't care if it's fake or real or not. Seriously.
And we're the same way here. Craig and I have always been really careful not to get into conspiracy theories.
Right.
But But I would be disingenuous if I ignored all these things that are going on. So
Sure.
yeah, bring us into this world.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
keep
right.
going, man.
Right now, I mean, people do need to be afraid. If they're not prepared with everything their family needs, food, water, fire, shelter, first aid, and hygiene for at least 3 years, preferably 5, they should be terrified, right? It's you look at what's going on globally. You realize the United States is the only country in the world that in the last 90 to 120 days has not declared that they're either in a state of recession or depression. And we are so far into a depression that people have no idea because they're going back to work and money's being spent, but they have no idea the number of jobs lost and the amount of money that our country has lost. And you know, we're the number one economy in the world, right? The largest economy in the world. China's number 2, and they declared a state of bankruptcy 47 days ago. Number 3, 4, and 5 are all in bankruptcy. Great Britain has announced that their economy is in worse state now than it's been since 1618. And the economy was so bad in 1618 that the crown ordered that any crime against the crown was punishable by death. And over the course of 150 days, they killed through execution 1 out of every 4 military-age males in the country for some type of crime, just so that they could alleviate the starvation of the people, and so they didn't have to worry about rebelling against the crown. That's how bad their economy was in 1618. And the economy today in Great Britain is worse than it was in 1618. Let that one sink in for a moment. In the last 95, 98 days, we've more than 2.5 times multiplied our debt. Yet the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says that they're not loaning any country any money. The IMF has determined that there's not a single country on the face of this planet that is solvent enough to justify loaning money to for at least the next 18 to 24 months. So if we're not borrowing the money from the IMF, and if we're not borrowing the money from any of the other countries that are already bankrupt, where are we getting the money from? The simple truth of the matter is it's coming from nowhere. We're literally creating it, which means now we're about to see a reckoning of that. If you dance the dance, eventually you got to pay the band, right? So we've gone from 17.2 trillion in debt to 38.4 trillion in debt in 4 months, with nobody loaning us that money, which means we've created $21.2 trillion out of thin air, which means we're about to see a devaluing of our currency. But the problem is our currency is going to be devalued against other global currencies, which are already in a state of devaluation because they're already in either a state of recession or depression. So our dollar is going to be devalued against currencies that are already been devalued, which it's monumental loss of where it's a ripple effect we're about to go through. And when that happens, we're going to see hyperinflation. We'll also see hyperinflation when supply gets real low and demand gets real high, which is what we saw a couple months ago with toilet paper, hand sanitizer, face masks, PPE, blah, 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 right? And now everything's on short supply because over 80% of the raw goods that are needed, or the base compounds that are needed for the rest of the global production, comes out of Shenzhen or Wuhan, China. Both cities of which haven't had factories open since January 17th. They've attempted opening twice. They've gone back into lockdown both times because of the flare-up of the novel coronavirus COVID-19. So yeah, we're in for a world of hurt with our economy, and that's just with the money. There's so many other areas. You talk about an impending global food shortage, or key indicators of a global food shortage. Key indicator of a global food shortage is when the United Nations announced that they're anticipating over 48 million people dying of starvation globally this year, because under normal circumstances, the situations we deal with, the locust plagues across China or across Africa, and the droughts across India and parts of the Middle East and Eastern Europe we've been dealing with, and then the floods in Eastern Europe. It's kind of fun. We have droughts and floods at the same time, knocking out crops, right? Normally there's other countries to bail us out, but our supply chain globally is so broken on our food supply that those people that we normally are able to help in those situations, we can't help. So over 40 million of our fellow humans are going to die of starvation this year. That tells me that's not just an indicator of global food shortages, but we're already in global food shortage. So yeah.
So can you You remember the short conversation we had? Are you able to share any of that?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, I own two companies that sell meals ready to eat, MREs, right? Because of that, I focus on a lot of the governmental websites where they put out RFQs or requests for quotes. Okay. So a couple things the average person in the United States doesn't know. So we're going to start at the basics. I'm going to need about 6 minutes for this. We good to go with that? I got 6 minutes.
Yeah, go with it. Yeah, go with it. It's important.
Awesome. So when you look at military rations, right? So let's take and understand that anything that the military buys that's food related that does not get produced in a chow hall, right, is what I refer to when I say the ration industry. So these are uniform group rations or MREs or meal cold weathers or first strike rations or long range patrol rations, yada, yada, yada. Food served in field kitchens as opposed to chow halls. These are all considered to be military rations, right, or things in the ration industry. And the ration industry is a $12 billion a year industry in the United States historically. Okay, with 11.1 billion of that being military spending, between 350, 400 million of that is FEMA or federal emergency management level spending. Then there's another about 220 to 250 million that is at the state, county, and city level for preparedness, disaster preparedness. And then the rest is, retail or preppers, survival, military supply stores, blah, 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 right?
Okay, let me stop you. Let me jump in real quick right here.
Okay.
I want you to re-emphasize that number that you shared because I know where this is going.
Okay.
People are going to forget this number, and I know you're going to build off of this to make your case.
Right. So the DoD spends 11.1 billion a year.
11.1 billion.
Right,
yes.
On rations. Right. This is historical numbers. Okay. FEMA spends between 350 and 400 million a year.
So we're at about a $12 billion industry there,
right,
with government spending.
Right. So then there's another 250 to 300,000 or 250 to 300 million that is spent at the state, county, city level. Right. So that doesn't leave much, 150, 200, 250 million on retail or preparedness, things like that, right? Sometimes hospitals buy rations, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, typically the United States DoD spends 11.1 billion. And again, that's on everything. That's not just the MREs. And there's a reason I'm emphasizing this. It's not just MREs. It's also UGRs, uniform group rations, right? First strike rations, freeze dried food, the whole gambit, right? So the reason it's so important is because DoD runs off fiscal year of October 1 to September 30. And last year in October 1, they went to the big three, Wernick, Sepaco, and AmeriQual, and they pretty much doubled their contract for the year. So, and I'm not saying they knew about coronavirus at that time. I'm convinced they did not know about coronavirus at that time. So, which begs the big question: why did they double what they had typically done? Why are they now spending 22.1 billion instead of 11.1 billion this year? So it gets worse, right? So that was in October. The third week of January, we saw a new cycle emerge, and I call it the 3-stage cycle, right? So it's 2 weeks federal, 2 weeks state, 2 weeks city, county, right? So the last week of January, we saw a number of non-FEMA, non-DoD government agencies, and they were putting out RFQs or requests for quotes to buy rations, okay? Specifically MREs and freeze-dried food. The second week of that cycle was when they had to be fulfilled. So they put out this RFQ on Monday. Quotes have to be received before 9 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, typically. They award the contract Monday morning. The product has to ship out that Friday of week 2, okay? Which this is not unusual, except it was the type of government agencies that were putting out the RFQs the first week of January. Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and on and on and on. Just government agencies that historically do not buy MREs. We're putting out RFQs for a vast number of MREs. We're talking a lot, and I'll come back around to that in a second. But then week 3, right? So you got the first week of the last week of January is the first week of the cycle. The first week of February is the second week of the cycle. That's when the federal level projects contracts get shipped. The second week of February, we saw state agencies issuing RFQs, requests for quotes, for MREs. And the interesting thing is, at that point in time, they dropped all DLA, or Defense Logistics Agency, guidelines, meaning you could charge more than 8% profit. You didn't have to list everywhere that everything came from. All these restrictions that keep people from trying to supply the U.S. government with things were released when the state level issued their RFQs the second week of February, which is now week 3 of the cycle, right? The third week of February, we saw those contracts being fulfilled and the product being shipped. And then the fourth week of February, which is the 5th week of our cycle, right? We saw city and counties issuing RFQs, with the first week of March being the delivery on those. So it's a 6-week cycle in 3 stages. The first stages is, the federal government sending out the RFQs on the first week and then getting them shipped on the second week. Second phase of the cycle is state agencies issuing RFQs, and then the week after that getting the product shipped. And then third phase is the city and county. So the interesting thing about that is during that time frame, that 6-week time frame, from the last week of January to the first week of March, non-DOD, non-emergency management government agencies spent a total of $56.7 billion specifically on MREs and freeze-dried food.
Wow.
Yeah. So let that sink in for a minute.
That was billion, right?
Non-billion with a B. Non-DOD, non-emergency management agency government agencies spent 5 times what DOD historically spends in a year. Think about that.
So it's like 250 million up to 56 billion.
Exactly. 250 to 300 million historically a year, to 56.7 billion.
And this was all before coronavirus really became a major thing.
Yeah, this is as we're moving into the lockdown. So
I'm not saying they're connected. I'm just
it's connected.
Out the fact.
No, it's connected. So typically what we've seen historically, whenever something major is on the horizon, is you see the federal level prepare, and then the next thing you know, the state levels are preparing, and then the next thing you know, the county and cities are getting prepared, and then the next thing you know, the civilian population is waking up that there's an issue. So it's pretty much stuff rolls downhill type thing. The top gets prepared first and buys up everything they need, and then the states can fight over what's left, and then if there's anything left, the cities and counties can fight over that, and then if there's anything at all left, the scraps at the bottom, well, we the people get it. So yeah, it's definitely connected, because the interesting thing about it is that the week that everything shipped to, if you think back historically, the week that everything shipped to the city and county level was the same week that on that Friday, President Trump declared a national state of emergency, national health crisis. He invoked the Federal Emergency Powers Act, which no president has ever evoked in the history of the United States. Think about that one. Right? It's the first time in the history of the United States that's ever been enacted. The Federal Emergency Powers Act effectively suspends the Constitution. It gives the President of the United States control of all industry, all communications, everything. And then he passed that authority on to the governors, all in one day. Actually, all in about 3 hours. And that's why we started seeing all these crazy laws being invoked by the far left governors that are out there. So the interesting thing about that is, and the reason I keep pointing that out is, historically, DOD spends $11.1 billion a year, right? So then in March, they doubled again. So they went from $11 billion historically to $22 billion for fiscal year 2020. Then in March, they doubled that again and actually there's a little more than double. It's $46.2 billion is what DOD is now contracted to spend during fiscal year 2020. Then it gets really interesting. So keep in mind, $11.1 billion a year $350 to $400 million a year for FEMA, From the last week of January through the first week of March, we saw non-FEMA, non-DOD government agencies at the city, county, state, and federal level spend $56.7 billion, right? And then we saw the cycle start all over again while everybody was rejoicing about the fact that they were going back to work, right? While everybody's rejoicing that, hey, bars are open and I can go get my hair cut and I can go get my hair done and, you know, I can go buy that new pair of shoes and blah, 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 and go eat a steak at a restaurant again. And everybody's elated over us coming out of lockdown. What nobody realizes is that 7 weeks ago, we saw that cycle begin again. And it completed last Friday. And over the previous 6 weeks prior to Friday night at 9 p.m., this previous Friday night at 9 p.m., we saw the same 6-week cycle. The first 2 weeks federal, the second 2 weeks state, the third 2-week phase was city and county, during which point in time non-DOD, non-FEMA government agencies in this country from the city, county, state, and federal level have spent a combined total of 174.6 billion with the B dollars. Long story short, ending the 6-week cycle that ended this previous Friday night, non-DOD, non-government agencies spent more money or committed to spend more money on long shelf life rations, whether it's MREs or freeze-dried food or number 10 cans or anything that had at least a 3-year shelf life, okay? They spent more in that 6-week period than DOD did from 2003 through 2019, and I would remind your listeners, during that time, we were fighting not just one, but 2 wars.
Wow. So let me just get real practical with you here. We have been talking about MREs, you and I just personally, and seems like a lot of food to me. And honestly, the delivery times seem incredibly crazy for companies even to be able to fulfill that demand.
Right.
Has this affected just bring it home, your ability for your MREs and everything you're involved in? Has this affected you in any way?
Tremendously. So if you take the amount of, so I own 2 companies, right? MRE Nation and Minotaur Trading Company. And if you take the amount of sales that we had in October, November, and December of last year, so the last quarter of last year, both companies combined, that dollar amount, we processed each company every week during the month of March, we processed more than that amount. And I'm not at liberty to disclose what that amount is, but let's just say that every week in the month of March, each of my companies did more money in sales than both companies combined the last quarter of last year. That's a lot. And we saw it across the board with everybody. Everybody in our industry got wiped out in March, right? Come around April, man, there was just nothing. There was nothing left. I was spending 15, 20 hours a week, searching anywhere, phone calls, internet, you name it, just trying to find any type of product that I could get in from my customers, right? Then we roll around into May and we barreled through it, right? I mean, my margins got down to under 5% in the month of April and May because I refused to raise my prices. I just simply refused to. And I was paying 95 to 96% of what I sell stuff for is what I was paying for during those times because you couldn't get anything. And then all of a sudden May rolls around, end of May, and everybody's got product again, right? And it's there, but it's not like it was before. The MRE entrees that were produced in May and June have a third of the meat in them that they historically had because there's so many meat shortages in our country right now. There's meat shortages worldwide. I mean, we're importing more cattle from Africa than what we're actually slaughtering is grown, home-raised cattle here in the United States. Our cattle industry is devastated. Our beef industry is devastated. But anyhow, the point is we all started getting stock flowing again and everything, and now it's all gone again. It'll be 2 to 3 years if our society stands and returns to some form of pre-January normals. It'll be 2 to 3 years before my company ever sees the inventory levels, either one of them, that we were seeing in January of this year. It's devastating. The entire supply chain is devastated. Basically, if you don't evolve and change and start producing this stuff in-house, if you're relying on outside companies for product, it's not going to happen. So that's one of the big shifts we did. We bought or leased a new facility. We moved from Louisville to Lexington area, downsizing the amount of space, but we came to this building for a number of reasons. One, that it was previously approved for what we're wanting to do with USDA and FDA and health department approvals. And two, it already had 3-phase 480 electric, which is what's needed for all of the heavy equipment that we need to bring in to package our own snacks and drink mixes and make our own desserts and all that kind of good stuff. So we had a decision to make in April, May, close the doors and be done, right? And take the money and go home, or reinvest all the sales from February and March and April into the company and see it grow so that we'll be here if the country's here in a year, for us to be here in a year to service our customers. And that's a big if, by the way. So, yeah.
Wow. So, not to make matters worse, Gabe. So that's, Bob, I don't even know how to say it. Like, I can't say that's fantastic, but that's terrible. It's terrible. And but let's just bring Gabe in. And Gabe, why don't you give us a couple updates on what you're seeing internationally and what's going on in China that people might not even be aware of. I've got the most recent issue of Epoch Times, and on the bottom of the front page it says, China, natural disasters rage across China, affecting tens of millions. What's that all about?
Yeah, so that's something that the Epoch Times has been very careful to keep on top of. The Epoch Times is usually ahead of everybody else because they actually care. they care about honest journalism.
Yeah.
So they are well informed. So they've been actually following the floods that are going on in China since more than a month now. It's been, I don't know, I think we've passed more than 40 days of rain in parts of China, and they are undergoing just crazy flooding.
40 days of rain?
Yeah, seriously, continuously, nonstop. We're not just talking, roads washed away. We're not talking about, embankments that are up, oh no, look how high the water is going. No, we're talking that the water level went up, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet. It's going up to the fourth floor of apartment buildings. In case you're interested, the city of Wuhan is currently largely underwater. You can watch videos of meat markets and people trying to go on with their lives, and they're standing knee deep in water, going up to tables where they're getting, buying their daily food or whatever they need. We're talking whole countrysides that look like massive lakes, more than lakes. It's like, where's the land? Well, there's dots of land and dots of land. Like, it's unbelievable. And it's all their farmland. So if you want to talk about food shortage, we're talking about the rice and rice growing regions of China. So their food is being dramatically affected. And that could be one of the reasons for the United States being in a hurry to buy food, because we have no idea on a bulk level what Chinese brokers are doing at this point. Anybody in China who is interested in getting food is probably buying it on a huge scale right now. For instance, in January, when the rest of the world wasn't being told that there was a pandemic in China, China was busy buying up all the personal health protection equipment they possibly could. They sent out directives to all of their Chinese embassies and different affiliated government offices across the world. And while everybody is not knowing that they're supposed to be stocking up on personal health hygiene things like masks and those kinds of things, China's receiving these massive shipments from around the world going into China, to take care of their own needs. Which, not that it's bad that they're taking care of the needs, but it's one thing to be taking care of your needs. It's another thing to be lying to the whole world and saying you don't have to worry, while you're privately buying everything that everyone else is going to need shortly. So again, it's not necessarily wrong to take care of your needs, but it's another thing to be lying to the whole world while you're doing it. So they are probably doing the same with their food. They've got major problems. China's in major problems. Corruption has been a continuous problem with the Communist Party. So their food that they do have is either moldy, or they've added sand into their granaries to make it heavier so that it seems like they have more. About 5 or 6 years ago, the Chinese food industry, one particular factory or holding place, whatever you want to call it, they got called on this. And so the Chinese higher government officials were sent in to investigate the problem, and miraculously, the whole place burned down. We're talking about these piles of grain on fire, like you can't even fathom how much food that was. And, 6 years ago, when there wasn't other global food shortages, these guys were willing to burn it all down so that their heads didn't roll when they found out what they've been doing with their food. They had been privately selling it on the side and not telling anybody. Like I said, adding sand, adding weight to it, so they sell off a 50-pound bag of rice. Well, 15 pounds of that is dust and debris mixed in. So there's been corruption already, which has made their current food shortage a bigger deal, because they were already dealing with corruption that changes the numbers. They're always changing their numbers. So China says, we've got X amount of food, but those numbers are skewed, just like all their numbers. They say that currently, some 100, maybe 115 people have died due to their floods. There's no way. There's no way it's been 115 people. It's got to be way more than that. Whole cities and villages washing away, major bridges washing away, cities that are buried in water. And, and then they say, there's a locust plague in China right now. And the official governments, a few days ago, they said that 16 acres have been affected. Well, I'm sorry, but who really believes that 16 acres? I grew up on 30 acres, and the idea that half of that had been affected by this locust plague, only half? It's...
I'm not sure that's a locust plague.
They might have just been talking about the previous hour.
Yeah, exactly. Like 16 acres were engulfed this, the last 15 minutes, maybe. I mean, it's unbelievable. So it's literally claiming that half of one hillside is being affected by locusts right now. That's the official. Yeah, what do you got, Bob?
Well, I was just going to say, can I interject something there real quick?
Sure.
So back in February, right before China started really truly disclosing what was going on with the novel coronavirus, they made a statement. There was a week there where they put 782 million of their citizens into lockdown quarantine. It's the largest quarantine in the history of the world. Of course, it's only been beaten 6 times since then, mostly by China. But at the time, it was a world record. But on the day that they did that, they announced that China was now in a warlike state. The previous day, the ministers in China, Chinese parliament, pretty much voted that Jin is the leader for life, right? So he will never face election again. He's the head of China until he dies, right? The very next day, the announcement's made that China's in this warlike state. What most people don't realize, there's like 12 different types of rice, right? 11 or 12 different types of rice. China only grows 4 of them. The United States only grows 2 of them. Okay, but China's always been the largest importer of rice in the world, and mainly because they feed their citizens literally every type of rice there is. It's a staple. It's the staple there, right? So, long story short, when they declared this warlike state, they cut their exports of products like rice and soy, their staple food products, by 67%, and they increased their imports by over 71%. But when it comes to things like alternative proteins like soy, they tripled the amount that they typically import of soy. So
Yeah, so it's just crazy what the Chinese government has been doing. And just to get people caught up with the global situation and with China in general, there is a Chinese billionaire, because he basically, according to the Chinese, betrayed them. He had to go into, exile. So he's in New York City, or he was in New York City until a few months ago. And so his most easy to pronounce name is Miles Kwok. That would be his most English name. Anyway, he's a Chinese exiled billionaire, and he's been calling out the CCP on the things that they've been doing. And, a year ago, his estimate was that the Communist Party of China only had maybe 2 years before it was going to implode itself. And that is prior to coronavirus. That's prior to these floods. These are floods that are threatening the Three Gorges Dam. It might give out. It may or may not.
Isn't that one of the largest dams in the world?
It is the largest. So it may or may not give out, but it's threatening it. That's the size flood we're talking here. So the Communist Party is in, a big... It's close to toppling. Last year in one of the major Chinese boom cities, 200 factories closed down. That was last year. So that the people who worked in their factories are now going home to their old, villages that they came from out of work. And unlike the United States and Canada and other places where we actually have a care net for people who are unemployed, it may not be a perfect care net, but we have a care net because, by and large, the government has, maybe not a perfect care for its citizens, but we've got a much better level of care than a lot of countries in the world. And China doesn't have that care. They're a communist country, but it means we are redispersing the wealth to ourselves. And that's really why China's where it is. China has never created a consumer base in their own people because their CEOs make all the money. And instead of paying their employees a reasonable living wage, which would create a buying consumer base within China, instead they never paid them. Instead, now that they know that the Communist Party is probably going to go down, they are getting their money out of China as fast as they can. They're buying up mansions, they're buying up yachts, they're buying up anything that has value outside of China to try to save their money. For instance, they'll go to Paris and they'll buy 2 or 3 very expensive watches. And then they go back to that same watchmaker the next day and return them. And then the watchmaker gives them their money back, only now giving it back in euros instead of the Chinese currency that they bought it with. So these communist officials are getting their money out of the country as fast as they can. So that'll give you an idea of the state of the Chinese Communist Party's solvency, which is basically non-existent. And now we have coronavirus, and now we have their flooding. So the Chinese Communist Party is in a very desperate state. And I think that's why they become more and more aggressive worldwide. If they can say our war is with India, we've got to fight against India. Our war is with Taiwan. We've got to fight against Taiwan. It gives the people of China a unified lookout at the world, like that's our real enemy, not the CCP. And that's one of the reasons that they've become more and more hostile to the nations around them. Not that they haven't always had a certain amount of hostility. Their goal is to become a world power, and not a nice one. So they've always had that underlying war against the United States, an underlying war against the world, but now they've stepped it up really big to try to get the distraction off the corruption of the CCP and onto other nations as the problem. So that's a big part. So that's kind of the outlook of China right now. That's where they are. It's very serious what's going on. I wish it wasn't so hard for the people of China. There's so many good people in China, and that's probably what distresses me the most about these floods going on. In my mind, the CCP's got to go down, and the faster it goes down, the better. I mean, this isn't even talking about Hong Kong. Hong Kong is, Hong Kong is just an expose on what happens inside China. As soon as the Communist Party is in charge, these are all the rights that you lose immediately. So Hong Kong is just an expose of what's already been happening in China for 80 years. So,
which is a lesson to people who want to tear down our system,
yeah,
and replace it with some sort of a Marxist, utopian, dystopian communist society here.
Yeah. Seriously. So Hong Kong is just a reality check for anybody who doesn't know what's going on in China. And so it's just one of those things. I feel bad for the Chinese people. I don't know. I'm a person who prays. I'm a Christian, and I pray for the people of China because they are facing the food shortages already. The food shortages that we're concerned about having, they're already dealing with. And I've been praying for the Chinese population because they're in a desperate state right now. I mean, tens of millions of people displaced by these floods, tens of millions of people displaced from ground where they were working. That's their food supply. And billions and billions and billions of dollars have already been lost in crops. So I want the Chinese Communist Party to go down, but I wish there was a way to protect the people at the same time. So I've been praying for them. I care about them a lot. And so if you're a person to pray for the people of China, pray that the Communist Party goes down. The faster it goes down, the chance for a rebuild happens.
Yep. So you guys mentioned something. That was fantastic, Gabe. Thank you for that. You guys had mentioned earlier, just briefly, and if we can just maybe spend 3 minutes on it, because we are almost at an hour already. Isn't that crazy? And I did want to go through the 7 tiers of food prep, although it may be very quick, and we'll get maybe we'll see how that goes, right? And we can get back to this maybe in a future podcast. But before we do that, could you guys spend, Bob, you had mentioned it, Gabe, you had mentioned it also briefly, additional pandemics, viruses that are happening right now?
Oh yeah, Bob, what do you have to share on that?
Well, there's a new pandemic that is not a coronavirus. It is not a zoological virus. It's spreading across Kazakhstan. I just pulled out the numbers when we were talking. I was wrong on my earlier numbers. It's actually over 1,700 people have died in the last 2 weeks in Kazakhstan. It is a pneumonia-like virus, but it is not a novel coronavirus, nor is it a zoological virus, which COVID-19, the reason it's so bad is because it's a novel coronavirus. It's also a zoological virus. That's one of the reasons why it's so bad for us. But so it's a completely different pandemic. And of course, we deal with the Black Plague in everywhere globally every year. There's a dozen to 24 cases reported in the United States every year, right? It's just something that's become a way of our life. We have a cure for it. There's a treatment for it, and 95% of the people that get to the hospital in time end up surviving it. But right now in Mongolia, we had our first death from it a week ago Thursday, and then the last week, the death toll in parts of Mongolia from the Black Plague is now up over 400. It's the largest outbreak of the Black Plague that we've seen since 1701. Yeah. So there's now 3 pandemics spreading. Fortunately, 2 of them are fairly contained. One in Kazakhstan, the other one in Mongolia. But yeah, this and technically the Black Plague isn't really a virus anyway. However, here at home, they have discovered a new strain. So the COVID-19 has mutated again. We're now dealing with a total of 3 strains. They discovered the 3rd strain in South Texas. Professor from Baylor University discovered it, and interestingly enough, over 68% of those hospitalized from that strain of COVID-19 are under the age of 40, and over 50% of the deaths from that strain of COVID-19 are under the age of 26. So yeah, this virus that only killed old people, yeah, it's mutated, and now there's a strain that's targeting younger people. So wear your mask, people. It's no longer a political issue. It's just a common sense issue. Wear your mask and don't spread it. If 90% of our country wore a mask, we could contain this virus. But, we don't like to do what's best for everybody. We like to do what we want to do. So, yeah. Anyhow, we're supposed to be talking about something else, right?
No, we're good. I mean, I just want to take everybody back to the critical rule of threes. We're well beyond three here. If you know how to count it, even if you're not good at math, we're way beyond three. And last thing before we get into this 7 tiers of food prep, because I think people still have time, although possibly limited. Gabe, you had mentioned a swine flu?
Yeah, there's a new swine flu in China.
In China. Again.
That's affecting their pigs. And if they didn't already have a pork shortage, which they do, now they're dealing with this new swine flu outbreak. The problem with the Chinese is that they've got a history of hiding those things. One of the reasons why the Chinese got the current head of the WHO in place was because the previous head of the WHO criticized them for the way they dealt with swine flu and SARS in previous years. So now they don't have that problem. They've solved that problem by voting in their good friend from Ethiopia. Anyway, but problem solved. Yeah, exactly. So, but it still is their reality that they may actually start seeing this new swine flu spread through their pigs. And if that starts happening, then they're going to have to start killing off lots of their pigs. There's talk that it might be able to, transmit to people, but that's never happened in China before. So, I'm not too worried about that.
Wow.
But it is very serious, all joking aside.
Hey, since you keep talking about, the three strange things go wrong, do something different, can I just throw out some facts in like 30 seconds, throw out some facts of what we're dealing with globally?
Absolutely.
Okay, so when we say, it's the worst flood on record, or it's the worst storm on record, or it's the worst earthquake on record, what we're referring to is 1828. That's when we started tracking these things globally, right? So anytime a government says, hey, this is the worst drought we've seen on record, right? That's the worst drought we've had since 1828, okay? Right now, we're seeing historic flooding, the worst on record in 11 countries. We're seeing historic drought, the worst on record in 14 countries. We're seeing historic earthquakes, the worst on record in 12 countries. And interestingly enough, the earthquakes are happening in areas where historically they do not have earthquakes, okay? We have 17 countries dealing with historic locust swarms. We have 19 countries, actually there's 19 active volcanoes globally right now in 17 countries. We have 31 countries currently in some state of war. We have 8 countries currently facing a complete and total society collapse. 6 of those 8 are currently in the early stages of society collapse. We have 29 economies globally that are set to crumble within the next 5 to 7 business days. That's our global update. So when you talk about the anomalies, we are facing things right now: war, pestilence, plague, right? My God, at this point in time, if a third of the ocean turned red, 90% of the population of this world would be hitting the nearest Christian church they could. I'm just saying.
Yeah. The thing is, it is
insane what we're going through.
There's been a lot of things that have been so interesting and odd too. Like for Britain, it was kind of the perfect storm because Britain was going through Brexit, which personally I support. But I have business friends in England who have been put on hold. They couldn't go forward with their businesses because the large banks weren't giving out loans to to businesses in England because they didn't know what the fallout of Brexit was going to be. So they were waiting till Brexit was over, then they'd start giving out loans and businesses could go back to work. And so just as Brexit was getting completed, then, the pandemic hit England and shut it down. So at its most critical time where it needed to sink or swim, it got sunk. So England's in a very difficult place right now. Again, you hope they pull through, but this is a kind of perfect storm anomaly, weird stuff happening, one on top of another, like it couldn't have happened at a worse time. It's very interesting.
Thank you both for those updates and your insight into all of this. Wow, we are over an hour, but we're going to do this. Bob and Gabe, let's talk about the 7 tiers of food prep. And here's what I'm going to say to all you guys that are watching or listening. You still have some time. I was just at the store the other day. I was at one of these surplus food stores. There's still a lot of these items available. I have some friends that just went to Sam's Club. There's still bulk food available. So it's not too late. If you're concerned about this, if you're looking at things, like we're encouraging you to look at them, I encourage you to do your own research. Check some of these things out on your own.
For sure.
But take this all serious. But there is still some time, Bob. There's still some time. So let's just go through these 7 tiers of survival prepper food prep. And Bob, you're saying 3 to 5 years. Man, I minimum. So that's a lot of food, everybody. I know that's going to sound overwhelming to a lot of you because a lot of us got what we could when this whole coronavirus panic buying thing started. And I'm going to tell you, I've talked to a lot of friends that aren't typically inclined to preparing beforehand, and they've mostly eaten all of that stuff now because things had seemed to ease off. But what we're telling you guys is you may have some time here to go out and get the items that you need. And these 7 tiers, I'm just going to start with the easy. Don't be overwhelmed with this. Do what you can to continue to prepare your family for what might be ahead. And so our 7 tiers are this. First, you have your first tier. That's what's in your kitchen right now. Most people have maybe, I don't know, a couple of days to a couple of weeks worth of food in their kitchen. I'm going to call that your everyday food or your everyday carry food. Tier number 2 is freezer food. You're laughing at me. Why are you laughing at me, Bob?
Everyday carry food. I love it. I'm going to use that. I am. Hey, I got some everyday carry food in my pocket. Anybody hungry? I am. I'm going to use that. That's pretty good.
So we've got your kitchen or your everyday food. Second, a lot of you all have freezer food in your freezer. That's usually good for about a year. But the thing you really need to consider with your freezer food is what happens if the electric goes out. Imagine that. Where I live, happens all the time. Multiple tiers of electric is a really smart idea, but you at least need to be able to preserve that food till you can get it into a different state other than freezer food. So I've got a couple of items here to just show you. One, this is the new Jackery 1000 solar generator. I'm not going to pull out the manual, but it can power a reasonable sized freezer and refrigerator for several hours, and it is rechargeable in about 8 hours in full sun with 2 of their 100 watt solar panels that can be chained together to power this. There's some smaller ones also. I'll do a full video on that if the world doesn't end before then and show you guys this amazing technology.
Yeah, just for a little pitch for Jackery, like I said, I was on the road all of those, winter, spring, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I have a little 250 Jackery, and I use that every day. And, I would use it through the night, and I charge it with the solar panel during the day, and it's real quality stuff. It's awesome.
Yep. So I've got some examples here. So here you go. Here's your everyday food. This is just a macaroni and cheese with gluten-free. What? Gluten-free macaroni.
Oh, you're killing me.
And cauliflower. You've got your perishable items, your breads and things that aren't going to keep that long outside of a freezer. That's going to be your tier 1, your freezer food. And we just talked about that, but I didn't bring any freezer food out here because it would have defrosted. But I did have a freezer pack, ice pack here just to signify that. We've got that covered. Tier number 3 is your bulk food. So I just went to one of the buckets that my wife had, and I pulled out this here Goya. Go Goya.
Hashtag MAGA.
And it's really funny because Gabe and I were joking around before. I said, "Hey, Gabe, guess what? I just realized the one bag that I pulled off of the top of the bucket when I went in was a Goya bag. If you don't know what that means, look it up." Go Goya. So this bulk food is going to be your rice, your beans, your sugar, your salt, your flour, the items that are comfort, convenience foods. Because we talked about this before, Bob. You want to have some things that get, are just special, some candy, some things like that. But these are pretty easy. This bulk food, I'm just saying, this is going to be your cheapest means. It's pretty available still right now. I know during the panic buying, Bob, I couldn't find bulk food anywhere. I couldn't find a 25-pound bag of sugar. So we're ahead of the curve on this right now, people. Take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, the curve is flattening, though, quickly.
The curve's flattening very quickly. And your bulk food, if it's packaged right, it could last 1 to 3 years, maybe even a little bit more. I'm going to tell you how to do that, and maybe I'll show you in a future video. But it's got to be cool. You got to eliminate the air. It's got to be dry, and it's got to be in low light. The way you do this is with those 5-gallon buckets that you can buy around. You need to get the ones that have tight lids with the gaskets on them. Then you need to get desiccant packs. I pack my bulk food in a liner also, which I close up and put the desiccant pack in there. You want to keep that in an area that's under 70 degrees, 55 degrees is ideal, and low light. Dry, no light, cool, and eliminate the air, and it's going to last the longest. Okay, that's our tier number 3 bulk food. Bob, you have anything to throw in there so far?
Bouillon cubes. Lots and lots of bouillon cubes.
Bouillon, going on my list.
Yeah,
that's what I don't have. And why?
Yeah, and I'm not talking about cans of beef broth or beef bouillon. I'm talking about the little cubes. One, they're lightweight. Typically, a single bouillon cube will make 8 to 10 ounces worth of soup. In a bug out situation, they're phenomenal because you drop one into 8 ounces of water and you drink it while you're walking. Right, it gives your body instant protein. But that, if you take, let's say you take a cup of rice, and you mix it in with the 8 ounces of water and a beef bouillon cube, right? It adds flavor to that rice, changes things up, and it's lightweight. It's almost non-existent. It's so small and tiny, So yeah, I don't just buy the little bottles you get at like Kroger or something for $4 or $5 of 20, 30 bouillon cubes. I buy the big containers of bouillon cubes, get them at like a grocery store supply house or a restaurant supply house. And then I'll put 6 or 8 of them into a Mylar bag, drop an O2 in, seal it shut with a hair straightener, and be done. Or you can buy them on our website. I'm kidding. Well, I'm not kidding, but I'm joking about plugging the website. So yeah, bouillon cubes are huge, a great thing to have, and it's always good to have, some type of powdered cheese or powdered butter, something that's going to have a longer shelf life that you could use to add to that rice or the beans or the oats, all the different things that you have, because you're gonna get tired of eating bland food after a while. So seasonings are huge morale booster, and they're lightweight and don't take a lot of space.
Yeah, at the very least, you can still get bulk bags of salt, and you can get bulk peppercorns. That's a good start. So in this bulk food category, our tier number 3, I'm also going to throw in DIY dehydrating, and we have the Excalibur dehydrator, so you can reduce the volume and the weight and of fresh vegetables, meats, fruits, all of that. You can reduce down in size and weight, and you can preserve it. And if we follow these same rules as far as storage that I talked about with the other bulk foods, your dehydrated foods can last a year or 2, and that's something you can do on your own as long as you have some electric. Also, I wouldn't be doing people right if I didn't say DIY canning and also pressure canning. Pressure canning allows you to can meats, and you're going to need protein. But DIY canning, we've got some articles. My wife does all the food stuff on ultimatesurvivaltips.com. She takes you through dehydrating, takes you through canning, a lot of bulk food stuff, how to buy and package those sorts of things at ultimatesurvivaltips.com. So those are 2 DIY things. And with the harvest coming up soon, I hope you all have a garden. If you don't, you might want to consider doing some of your own preps as far as these bulk foods. Next, we have Bob and Gabe, production canned foods. Now, this is one of your easies, right? I just have a can of vegetarian baked beans here. I'm not going to tell you what the date is on this thing, but I would eat it. It is well past the expiration date. And one reason I know it's probably still okay is that, one, it's stored properly in a controlled environment. And two, when your canned goods start to go bad, you're going to start seeing that the can itself will expand because biology starts happening in there. So you're going to, instead of a flat or a slightly dented convex top and bottom, you're going to see your top and bottom start to balloon out a little bit. And that's an easy. Now, I'm just going to tell you, because of the way a lot of canned foods are processed, you're going to have a lower vitamin content in those foods, but it is food. It's calories, it's protein, it's all that stuff, trace minerals, and it's cans. And this is your easy. Everybody can go out and buy a couple of cans of beans, right? Bob, anything else on tier number 4, which is our production canned? And generally, those will have a shelf life of 5 years plus.
Right. So along those same lines, people can actually make their own MRE style retort pouch entrees, right? And you can do it with vegetables as well as meats. And it's typically a lot cheaper because you can buy 1,000 16-ounce retort pouches for they come 500 to a box at that size for like $180. You can't buy 500 16-ounce jars for that kind of money, right?
Tell people what a retort pouch is.
Retort pouch is what MRE entrees come in. It's the exact same process as canning, except it takes up less space. It's more versatile, and you don't have to worry about rust or dents. So they have a little bit of a longer shelf life. And there's websites out there like Vacuum Sealers Unlimited and Flare Packaging, a couple on the ones that sell those gold retort pouches. And if you know how to can meat or can butter or can vegetables or jams, then you know how to use a retort cooker. It's the exact same. It's the same equipment, just a different pouch. So it'd be worth taking 10 minutes and watching YouTube videos on how to retort cook and retort can.
That's really good, Bob. And you just reminded me of something that wasn't in my DIY list here under bulk food, and that's vacuum sealing. Game Saver is a name brand, but I just checked on Amazon, and there's a lot of different vacuum sealers, and those are going, depending on how you process your food, that's going to keep especially your dehydrated food, that's going to keep it a lot longer if it's packaged.
Yep.
Well, yep. Okay, tier number 4. Oh, we got it. Production canned, which is tier number 4, 5+ years. Then we're up to MREs, Bob. Tell us. And look at this. I've got some MRE Nation. We'll pitch you, Bob. You've given a lot here today. We've got some MRE Nation MREs.
Yeah, MRE Nation's running a little bit low on product right now. There's so you can go to that website. By all means, please go to that website and have a field day, right? But Minotaur Trading Company has a lot more inventory right now.
Okay, spell that for everybody.
MINOTAUR tradingcompany.com. You can also get to it by minotaurmre.com.
Okay. And you do still have MREs, right?
This week, yes. So yeah,
I'm working on that order, Bob.
Good, because we've got quite a bit of inventory right now, but I did find out yesterday an order I had placed that was supposed to ship next week. I've been told it has been put on hold, and they can't tell me when it's going to ship.
So
okay. Brother, the government agency spent $174.6 billion in the last 6 weeks on MREs. There's not going to be a lot for me to be able to get my hands on. So, yeah.
Okay. So for people that don't know what MREs are, give us the 1-minute version.
So MRE is meal ready to eat. It's literally you don't even have to heat it up. They come with flameless ration heaters. So if you want a hot meal, everything you need is right there in the bag. But typically it's going to be your entree, a snack item. Sometimes you get a side item, you get a dessert item. The average military MRE is going to be anywhere from 1,050 to 1,150 calories. The average civilian MRE is going to be 900 to 1,000 calories. The average MRE Nation MRE is 1,300 to 1,500 calories, and the average Minotaur MRE is anywhere from 1,400 calories up to 2,000 calories each. In all of ours, we give snacks. You get bread items, spreads, drink mixes, coffee, all that kind of good stuff. So the thing about an MRE is it's going to last you 5 to 7 years. It's lightweight. Typically, they weigh about a pound to a pound and a half, and it's everything you need for a full meal, including utensils and the way to heat it.
Yep. And I'm just going to say Bob's MREs are the best tasting. Having a lot of experience with MREs, I've never looked forward to them, honestly, except one time when I was doing a 40-day training and we did our knife-only survival, and we had 2 hours until we went off for 4 more days and did scout survival training, and they gave us an MRE. That was the only time I had been excited about MREs until I found you, Bob. And Bob, I'm just going to say Bob is like a food engineer. He's all about like, if you're going to have food in storage, you want to have food that you're going to eat. And this is another thing. Some of you guys may be thinking this is complicated. I don't have a whole lot of money. This is bad. I just want to tell you, 1, don't panic. Do what you can. But 2, if you're going to invest in food, you're investing in food. You're not buying a new iPhone, a new computer, or a new car. You're buying something that's going to have continuing value that you can dip into, and you're going to eat it anyway. So in a sense, if all of these indicators are wrong, and you just end up with a year's worth of food or 2 years worth of food, you're just going to eat this over time, and you're paying forward for your family's food needs. Bob, I want to thank you for being with us. We just found out that Bob's got to leave us. He had a previous engagement that he has to keep, and we got a late start because we had some technical difficulties. Bob, thank you so much again. Please come back again, and can you tell everybody how they can connect with you, connect with your knowledge, connect with your company, and pick up some MREs, because you still have some this week, right?
Yeah, well, first of all, with the MREs, so on MinotaurTradingCompany.com, MinotaurMRE.com, I did create, just a little while ago, I created a coupon code. It's UST, UST10, and that gets you 10% off your entire order for Ultimate Survival Tips.
Still? You're still going to give us a 10% off even though you're getting low?
Yeah, look, here's what it boils down to, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. My prices are the same as they were January 1. I have not raised my prices at all during this crisis. I haven't taken advantage of the market at all. I've tried to get as much stuff to as many people as possible, and I still feel that way. Yeah, I've got enough food in my warehouse right now, my personal warehouse, to feed 217 families of 4 for a year, and that's not going to change. But so I've got plenty of food myself. But work-wise, we sell it until it's gone, and if I can't replace it, I can't replace it. So yeah, I'll still give the discount 10%. It's UST10. That's on MinotaurTradingCompany.com, MINOTAUR tradingcompany.com. And other than that, you can email me at bob@mrenation.com. My phone number's on the website. You can hit us up on the MRE Nation or the Minotaur Trading Company Facebook pages. Phone numbers on both the websites, both the Facebook pages, guys. So I wish everybody the best of luck in the months ahead. Yes, Dave, I'd love to be on your podcast again. We've got some dark and troubling times ahead of us, and people need to be made aware of what's going on so that, 1, they can prepare for it, and 2, when it happens, it's not a shock and a panic to them. They can survive it if they know what's coming.
Yep.
So
a lot of people weren't ahead of the original pandemic scare and all that. You have an opportunity now to get a little bit ahead on this.
That's right.
Bob, thank you so much. We'll bring you in a couple of weeks, and we'll maybe catch up on where things are at that particular point. Okay, brother?
Perfect. Outstanding. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, everybody. So we're in the 7 tiers of survival food, and we're in tier 6. And so that's freeze-dried. Now, here's the thing with freeze-dried. It is expensive. It seems expensive, but it's easy to store, lightweight, and you just add water. But most importantly, it's got a 20-year shelf life. So I'm just going to let you know right now that your freeze-dried food is getting really difficult to get. You're going to find out at most websites that it's a 6 to 10 week delay. That's pretty tough. I'd rather have it today than hope that I'm going to have it in 6 to 10 weeks. But I'm going to tell you that this company, ReadyWise, I do believe that they have food in stock. I picked up a small portion of this just to top off our survival preps from Sportsman's Guide. Sportsman's Guide has been a great sponsor for the Survival Show podcast. So what I just showed you, that was those were entrees, and then you can get things like this is a fruit bucket, and you can see how light that is, but it's still 120 servings. Not cheap. I mean, the entree bucket, that's over $200. The meats, the dehydrated, freeze-dried meats, and the fruits, those run over $100 a bucket for those, but it's a good thing to have. So that's going to be your tier 6. Tier 7. Dun, dun, dun. What could tier 7 be? The freeze-dried's got a 25-year shelf life if you treat it right. Tier 7. A lot of people don't think about this, but tier 7 is actually your long-term food preps. And so I highly recommend, if you can get any, what you want to do is you want to get yourself a seed vault that is, you specifically want heirloom seeds. And what that means for you is that you can take the seeds from the plants when they grow, and you can
replant them.
You can dry them out, and you can replant them next year.
Unlike the GMO ones that are made to never reproduce seed. So they grow once, and then that's it.
Yep.
It's pretty special.
And a lot of your hybridized seeds are going to do the same thing. So you need to get heritage or heirloom seeds. And there are several companies, like I got these from, I believe, My Patriot Supply. And you can get some. I did check Amazon like a day or two ago, and I believe you can still get them. You can go to, for all of these things, you all can go over to kit.co/ultimate survival tips. And I've got a bunch of lists on all the items you need for food preps. One thing I want to get back to, so our 7 tiers of food are, 1, it's your kitchen items that you have. Maybe you've got a couple of days to a couple of weeks of food. Macaroni and cheese signifies that, although macaroni and cheese stored right will last a long time. But that's your everyday food supply. I get you a week or 2 weeks. Then you have your freezer foods. Then you have your bulk foods. Those will get you a year to 3. And those are going to contain your rice, beans, your sugar, salt, flour, bouillon cubes, like Bob mentioned, your DIY dehydrated stuff, your DIY canned stuff. And one thing I want to mention, okay, so here's a can of lentil soup that my wife put up. This is awesome stuff. Gabe, you've had some of this before too. And one thing I want you to notice is these glass jars are reusable. However, the tops that seal on here are typically bought at a store, and they're not reusable. So you would have to either buy a whole bunch of these tops, or there are some companies, and I'm going to pitch a little company that is, you can go to canninglids.com. It's a U.S. company. Lids are made in the USA. And here you go. It's a nylon lid made in the USA that you can reuse time and time again. They say you can get at least 5 or 6 years out of a lid. And they have these gaskets. So these gaskets have a life, again, of 5 to 7 uses. So when you buy the lids, you buy them in bulk. You get the gaskets to go with the lids, and then you can buy extra gaskets. So if you're into canning, or you want to be into canning, you want to go over to canninglids.com, or there's a couple other companies, but I like these ones because this is where we got ours from. And it's a U.S. company, and I like that. So you need to know that if you're going to put up your own canned food. Our tier number 4 is production canned food. Easy to get. Go get yourself some now. Then we've got MREs. Bob still got MREs in stock. Go check him out. Freeze dried, and then heritage seeds, doing a garden. All right. Another thing you need to make sure of, a lot of these foods, to reconstitute them, especially your freeze dried, your dehydrated, and preparing bulk, you need to be thinking about water too. We'll cover that in another podcast, Gabe. And wow, that was a lot of stuff.
It was well versed, kind of broad scope there.
Yep. Anything else we need to talk about before we get on out of here?
Man, we're busy solving the world's problems. So I guess, what else do we need to say?
All right, just getting out of here. Just remember the critical rule of threes. We've got a lot of anomalies happening in the world. Do something now to take care of your family, take care of yourself, your food supply. You're a little bit ahead of the curve if you're watching this shortly after we put it out. So take advantage of that. Do what you need to do. I'm not saying hoard food, but get what you need. All right, I'll take us out of here.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us in the podcast today. I wish this was like a more encouraging topic, but we are the Survival Show podcast. We are Ultimate Survival Tips. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, it's been a survival hobby for many years. Now we're talking about real stuff. This is the real stuff. Take care of your family. Next time, what we're going to start doing here on a weekly basis is we're going to start helping you build out an emergency disaster long-term plan. So this was kind of like the introduction to that. And because of the timeliness of getting yourself bulk foods before you just can't get them anymore, I wanted to bring this to the forefront. But I want to mention over at ultimatesurvivaltips.com, we do have a 72-hour home emergency disaster kit checklist, part 1, for you available. That's at ultimatesurvivaltips.com. Also, so subscribe to the show if you haven't done so. If you have, thank you. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube, Facebook, give us a like, go over to your favorite podcast app, iTunes, give us a 5-star rating, and leave us a comment. Those encourage us a lot. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget our sponsors for today, Tiny Survival Guide, MSK1 Knife. You all need the Tiny Survival Guide. It's not a bad idea to get yourself a great knife that's built for the rest of your life. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember, keep it simple, be positive, and stay sharp.